I appreciate you all joining me today. This is our cancer nutrition webinar, and our topic is plant-based diets made easy. So hopefully you'll take home some easy tips on how to incorporate more plants into your daily eating. My name is Julie, and I am the cancer dietitian. So I work for Cancer Services Incorporated. We're actually a local community-based cancer support nonprofit located in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But I have been the creator and author of CancerDietitian.com since 2007, and am very grateful for the support of Cancer Services to help make sure that this website and resource continues to be available to anyone facing cancer at no charge. So my website, my podcast, these webinars are all supported by Cancer Services, and we are a nonprofit. So if you feel like you want to help support and make sure these are available, you can donate on the Cancer Services webpage. All right, so that's our topic. This is me. If you don't know me, I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. I'm a board certified specialist in oncology nutrition, and I have been for almost my entire career, which is, getting longer and longer by the year. But I have in the past done some diabetes management, heart health, type work, but mainly all of my work has been either in a cancer center clinic or here at Cancer Services. So I do continue to take the board certification exam every 5 years to make sure that I am current and up to date. I have a BS in biology from NC State University and a master's in public health from UNC Chapel Hill. And I have done an executive certificate in nonprofit leadership at Duke University. So for those of you who aren't in North Carolina, those are like three competing um, universities. And so anyway, doesn't bother me. I think they're all great. But I do tell you all of this about my training because there's lots and lots of opinions around food and nutrition. And not everyone's opinion is an expert opinion. So you want to make sure that if you are following advice, nutrition advice or food advice, you know that either the person who gave it to you is trained appropriately to know what they're doing, or that the place that they got their information from is a good, solid science and evidence-based resource. If you need more information on how to interpret, nutrition studies or find legitimate nutrition information, I have other webinars on that, and I'm happy to point you to those. But this is me and our topic on plant-based eating. We're gonna, today I will define for you what is a plant-based diet because there's a lot of confusion around what it is or isn't. Um, I'm going to talk about simple ways to include plants into your regular habits. So I am not any kind of fancy chef or major foodie. I love some good food, but I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen or even at the grocery store, honestly. Like it's kind of a fun experience, of course, to be at the grocery store, but I have found grocery delivery and grocery pickup to be one of the best things that's happened to me. So we'll talk about some of those things, easy and delicious meal and snack ideas, and then my suggestions on healthy food to stock your cupboard with. So I call these are all my sort of plant-based eating hacks, which is making it super simple for you to eat lots of plants. Okay, so as a reminder for anybody who hasn't attended any of my other webinars or workshops, what we know about nutrition and cancer is that eating plants is important. However, there's no individual food or nutrient that you have to have or that you have to avoid. So the idea that there are sort of miracle foods or toxic foods is not an evidence-based or science-based way to look at nutrition. When we talk about nutrition supporting your health and well-being, it really is not any individual foods that will do that for you. So if you don't like blueberries, you don't like kale, you don't have to eat those. There's nothing magical about those things. They are, of course, good for you. So if you like them, I do encourage you to eat them. But it's really more of a pattern of eating or eating plenty of plants that we know can help support a good, healthy body and immune system. And on the alternate side, there's no toxic food. So the idea that sugar is toxic is not evidence-based. or that there's any particular, some people will say, well, is meat bad for you? Is dairy bad for you? There's nothing wrong with those things as long as you're eating them in the right balance. And so what we're going to talk about today is what does that look like, that balance? So really, when it comes down to this healthy eating for cancer survivorship, and even for those who are just interested in cancer risk reduction or going through treatment, assuming that you're able to eat okay, we do encourage you to have good, healthy food habits. And that those habits, kind of what you do most of the time, is more important than any individual foods that you do or don't eat. So you want to make a habit to offer your body plenty of plant nutrients each day. And that's why we, as health providers or sort of organizations, do recommend plant-based eating. That does not mean plant-only eating. So when we define what is a plant-based diet means eating lots of foods with a focus on plants. So you're eating mostly plants, you're eating fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. That's what makes up most of your dietary intake. However, that doesn't mean you have to exclude the other things. Eating lots of plants, you could do that while also eating meat or while not eating meat. So I call that a choose your own adventure. So a plant-based diet means eating mostly plants. It may include limited amounts of animal foods if you choose. So that would be dairy, eggs, fish, animal meats. It is fine to eat those in moderation. They are good sources, very efficient sources of protein. So it's much easier to get protein in animal products than it is from plants. However, you can eat a healthy, nutritious diet without eating um, meat or dairy products. And but you know what? If you like them, which I do like the flavor of, cheese and um eggs and things that it can add to the, dish that you're making. It is completely appropriate to eat those things, assuming it's in balance with most of the plants that you're eating. So plant-based diet just means you eat lots of plants. It is not about what you don't eat. So sometimes vegans will say, well, I eat plant-based. Um, that is true. Vegans do eat plant-based, but so do people who eat meat. So that said, there's your kind of easy definition, but the practical pieces of what does that look like from day to day, I know can be a little bit harder to implement. So we're going to go through those things. Um, I like to keep it simple. So when I am helping people understand how to know if they're eating a plant-based diet, I use a plate method. Now there's several different types of sort of plates out there. So I'm going to give you a few different ones and then I'm going to show you what I use. So one plate guide is called the New American Plate. It is from the American Institute for Cancer Research. They are an organization that I spend a lot of time reading their information. I think they are excellent. They are one of the best sources for cancer nutrition and evidence-based information. So I would highly recommend that you get on their email list. Their I don't even know if they still have a print newsletter. They used to. But I would love for their information to get out to more cancer survivors, however it is. So they do have this guide. It's called the New American Plate, and it's actually really, really simple. So their plate is essentially two-thirds or more that comes from vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, and one-third or less from animal proteins. All right. Now, the next kind of plate is a little more, I don't know, structured, you might call it. So, the American Institute for Cancer Research is, one third, two thirds. Now, the myplate.gov breaks it down into quarters, not technically exactly quarters, if you'll notice how their, square or triangles are here. A little bit more vegetables than fruits, a little bit more grains than protein, dairy on the side. So that's one way of looking at it. Totally, I think, very evidence-based and a nutritious way to eat. Now, the Harvard University plate is also really good, and a lot of people like to use it. It again has more vegetables than fruits on the one side, more, I guess the protein and the whole grains are pretty equal, has a little bit of healthy oils, and then their side is water. I will tell you when you look at these plates, they're probably generally recommend or their guidelines are around like over the day. Because could you imagine one of these plates for breakfast? Like it would be a little bit odd to have breakfast with lots of vegetables. Most people don't do that, although if you do, you get bonus points. You'll see I give you bonus points for that later. Um, However, I'll show you why I have a balance between these two. So this is the Cancer Dietitian plate guide. Okay, you like my picture here? It's so fancy, isn't it? Um, I keep it pretty simple, and that is half the plate is fruits and or vegetables, quarter of the plate starch, quarter of the plate protein. I don't really need it to be any more complicated than that. Also, if this is a bowl or a plate, doesn't really matter to me. This is all about the ratio of the essentially like food groups that you have in your meal. And so to kind of dig in a little bit deeper, I would say the starch is roughly a half a cup. That's either going to be a whole grain or a starchy vegetable. Starchy vegetables are potatoes, corn, and peas. Um, and then your protein corner, as I call it, would be a half a cup if it's like beans or something where you would, tend to measure it in a cup, or 4 ounces is typically about the size that we're looking at for an animal protein. You can choose plant or animal in that corner of the plate. And then for the half of the plate or bowl, that is fruits or vegetables, that's measuring around a cup. So, what I say is that most people are not interested in a lot of vegetables at breakfast. It's just kind of outside of our American breakfast culture to have a lot of vegetables. Totally fine. You can fill half your bowl or your plate or whatever it is that you're having with fruit at breakfast. If you add vegetables to breakfast, then I consider that bonus points. So, the times that I would typically have vegetables at breakfast is if it's combined with eggs, so omelets, or I'll show you a picture of something in a few minutes of a dish that I would have vegetables with eggs. The other time that I do have vegetables with breakfast is if I'm doing a smoothie. I will just generally kind of throw a half a cup of greens, either frozen greens or fresh greens, into the smoothie, and there you get bonus points with that. And then at lunch and dinner, I recommend a cup of vegetables. Plus, I would probably have a fruit on the side, sort of an extra fruit. So I didn't want to complicate my plate, of course, because I need it simple. But I might have added a little, circle on the side. The other thing I'll point out is that with the USDA's My Plate, they put milk on the side as it's sort of its own food group. Um, I think that just makes things more complicated than it needs to be. I would tell you that dairy, it is mainly a protein. So I consider it as part of the protein corner of the plate. So if this is let's say our breakfast bowl, I would put a whole cup of fruit in the bowl first, whether that's blueberries or bananas or whatever fruit you like. And then your starch is mostly probably going to be your cereal. That might be granola. I really like grape nuts. Those are one of my favorite. I like kind of crunchy cereals rather than soggy cereals. So I would then use a half a cup, or if it's, let's just say Cheerios, whole grain Cheerios are a great source of fiber and whole grains. So it would be, I think a serving of Cheerios is 3/4 of a cup. And then your protein is going to be your milk. And you do want to make sure that in this example, the milk you're choosing does provide protein. So almond milk, cashew milk, coconut milk. Some of the bean milks have some protein, but what we're going for is to try to get more like, 15 grams of protein at least at breakfast. A cup of milk is 8 grams of protein. If you're using yogurt, that is more concentrated. And so that's something you may want to pay a little bit of attention to is how you can make sure you get enough protein at breakfast. It could be a plant-based protein like soy milk that would give you 8 grams of protein and it's a plant. I typically just use cow's milk and then get my plants from the starch and the fruit. All right, so we do have a question that came in. I have always been told not to eat sugar after my diagnosis. I've modified my diet to stick to plant-based foods, but do eat meat and desserts from time to time. Does being estrogen positive limit your ability to eat meat and dairy? No, and nor does it limit your ability to have soy, which is another kind of common, I call it a myth now, but it was evidence informed when they first recommended that breast cancer survivors, especially the hormone positive breast cancer survivors, avoid soy. That was sort of evidence informed, but once we had more studies with human breast cancer survivors, we discovered that actually soy is good for you and that the concentrations of plant estrogens does not affect an estrogen positive cancer risk. So that said, I have a whole thing on sugar, but I call that my number one myth that people with cancer have to avoid sugar. That is not true. You can have it in moderation. Sugar is just a plant. Actually, technically, sugar is a plant food, right? It's very processed, so that takes away a lot of the nutrients. Let's say you just like chomped down on some sugar cane. That would be more of the quote natural version of sugar, right? So there's nothing wrong with sugar. However, it does, tend to, in the American diet, we tend to overdo the amount of simple sugars that we eat. When we talk about things like fruit sugars, those are perfectly healthy. So those are the sugars that are naturally found in fruits, and they tend to be balanced with fiber and lots of other nutrients. And those are totally fine to consume, and you don't need to have any particular limit on that. When it comes to added sugars, we do want people to kind of use moderation. Are collard greens and turnips plant-based food? Yes, because they are plants. It's kind of a question more of, are collards plants? Yes. Do you eat them? Yes. Then they give you plant nutrients, and that's what we're going for. And turnips, there's turnip greens, right? Which is like the green part that grows outside the ground. And then there's the turnip root itself that grows underground. And both parts of the turnip plant are really good for you. I did not grow up in the South. So turnips were not a thing that I was introduced to until I lived in the South. I still have a hard time eating them because they're kind of bitter. So, if you can enjoy turnip greens, I think that is amazing. They are a cruciferous vegetable. So they're really good for you. I don't love them. I like the turnip, so the green part will give you a certain type of nutrient profile. And then the white part, which is the root, will also be good for you, but it has a different nutrient profile, and you can kind of tell that because they're different colors. That tells you there's different nutrients. So anyway, yes, they're great for you, as are other greens, um, and other root vegetables are really good. All right. So these are the daily habits that I recommend based on current evidence-based recommendations. So number one is to eat 4 to 5 cups of fruits and vegetables every day. And we'll talk in a little bit how I recommend you do that. But kind of the strategy I use is a cup of fruit with breakfast, a cup of vegetables with lunch, plus a fruit, a cup of vegetables with dinner, plus a fruit. And then when you have a snack or dessert, I consider dessert to be sort of like another snack. Um, is that you might consider having fruit or vegetable with your snack or with your dessert. And that will help you get 4 to 5 cups of fruits and vegetables in a day. Number two, you want to spread your protein throughout the day. So I mentioned 15 to 35 grams of protein at meals, 7 to 15 grams at snacks. Now, even if you're somebody who does consume meat and dairy, you still should consume a plant-based protein at least once a day. So that's beans, nuts, or seeds at least once a day. It could be hummus with carrots. It could be trail mix. It could be putting extra nuts on your cereal in the morning, whatever it is. And then if you do eat meat, a small portion is all you need to meet your needs. So when we talk about a quarter of the plate being for protein, 4 ounces of cooked meat is enough to give you 21 grams of protein, sometimes even up to 25. So I think that is pretty good. And that's why we say, most people who are meat eaters, they tend to overdo it. And what happens is they fill up on protein or from their meat and they don't eat enough vegetables. All right, number three is your nutritious carbs. Carbs are good for you. I want you to eat carbs, yes. Include carbs at most meals and snacks. In some cases, if you are having, like if I have a smoothie in the morning, I might not have grains in my smoothie, but I will get carbohydrates from fruit. And so sometimes you can have fruit sort of flex over as your carbohydrate or your starch if you're thinking of the plate. Um, Fruit can fill that starch role if that works for you. I don't do that for every meal, but that it can be an opportunity to use fruit as a carbohydrate or a starch. Include carbs at most meals and snacks. 100% whole grain will give you more plant nutrients than refined or processed grains. And if you do have a starchy vegetable like potatoes, corn, or peas, we would recommend that it be minimally processed. So the difference between, right, a baked potato with the skin or yourself cutting up a potato and making, fries at home, or even potato chips at home where you slice it up and toss it in oil and roast it in the oven or air fry it. That's different than the level of processing that restaurants go through to create French fries. So you do get credit for a starchy vegetable when you do it at home. And your general guide, which I already showed you on the plate, is about a quarter of your plate would have carbohydrates. So fluids are another opportunity for you to get more plant nutrients in. Unsweet tea, unsweet coffee doesn't add a lot of extra sugar, but does give you plant nutrients. So, yes, coffee can be good for you, as well as tea. Anytime you're brewing plants into the water and drinking the water, you are getting more plant nutrients. Sparkling water, diluted juice, and low fat milk are also options for flavor without extra added sugar. And then another way you can get these bonus plant nutrients is to add herbs and spices to your food. So if you're having cereal in the morning with banana and let's say milk, and you want to put a little bit of cinnamon on your cereal, that is an excellent way to add more plant nutrients. So anytime you can add herbs or spices, irradiated dried herbs are perfectly healthy and still give you plant nutrients. But if you are fancy and you like to get the fresh herbs, you are welcome to do that. And you'll see in this picture, even black pepper is a type of plant. And when you grind that pepper, or shake it onto your food, it does give you more plant nutrients. So bonus points there. So when we talk about plant nutrients, they're essentially these are plants. They have all different types of nutrient profiles. And so one plant might have, say, 10 or 20 different nutrients in it, right? And they typically are kind of typed by color. And so things like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, I mentioned cruciferous vegetables. They tend to be in the dark green category. Blueberries, represent the blue category. And then you can probably tell that I sort of adjusted this little color wheel here with the white pie piece because a lot of people, they're very down on white foods and they say, don't eat white foods. And what they mean is don't eat super refined, right? Processed foods. But there are lots of nutritious white foods. So garlic is on here, cauliflower, all bananas, they are technically white on the inside. And so white is a perfectly appropriate plant color to eat and does give you good nutrition. So I do a program called Eat the Rainbow, and the next one will be starting up in June. And the reason we talk about eating the rainbow is that you do not need a nutrition degree. You do not need to know the names of, all the 1,000+ different types of plant nutrients that are in different foods. You do not need to know all that. What you need to know is when you eat a variety of colors of different colorful plants, you're getting a variety of nutrients. And they all help your body to get what it needs. All right, so let's talk a little bit about kind of categorizing our food. A lot of people are aware of the different food groups and which foods go in different food groups, but I find that actually there's a lot of people who are not aware. Well, what counts as a carbohydrate? What counts as a protein? What counts? So we're going to go through kind of some suggested foods that you can have and talk about what food group is represented. So thinking about when you go to the grocery store, or let's say you populate your cart, right? If you're like me, you have an app on your phone and you populate your cart with the foods that you want, which is kind of handy because if you don't know where the item is in the grocery store, how nice is it to just do a little search and put it in your cart and some person who really knows the grocery store goes around and grabs it for you. So fresh fruit, fresh herbs, applesauce, fruit cups, raw vegetables, freeze-dried vegetables or fruits, hummus or bean dip, salad kits, tofu. These are all different types of foods that you find in the produce department, right? And they typically recommend they represent fruits and vegetables. So that's pretty easy. Now you have lots of choices of versions of the food, right? I have applesauce on here, which is a version of an apple. So what I will tell you is that any fruit is better than no fruit, any vegetable is better than no vegetable. So I don't want anyone to sort of have an excuse that, well, applesauce isn't really apples, so I won't eat it. And then therefore they don't eat any fruit. Like applesauce is going to be better than no fruit, right? And it's very convenient. And that's the other thing that will help you eat more plants is if you give yourself the freedom to consume convenience foods that do give you plants, you will eat more plants. So my favorite things right now are to buy basically fruits and vegetables that do not require a lot of prep. So I will show you. I even have some foods in my office right now. These are they're mini cucumbers. They even have smaller cucumbers. Now, if you haven't seen them, some of the grocery stores sell almost like baby carrot sized cucumbers. These are more like a bigger than a baby. But I just eat them straight up like this because they don't have the seeds that you have to cut out. The skin is perfectly fine to eat. That makes it easy for me to eat cucumbers and get more plants in, as if I don't have to scrub it off, take off the skin, chop it up. By the time I have to do all those things, I am in a phase of life where that is not going to work for me. So I buy as many convenience fruits and vegetables that it is a process, right? So if I buy baby carrots, they are processed, but they're not processed in a way that reduces their nutrient profile. So I love buying baby carrots. Personally, I like whole carrots better. I think that they have a better taste. So I will buy, like in this picture, you can see the whole carrots on the shelf there. I would buy the whole carrot and I would wash it off and I wouldn't even peel it. I would just eat it. You don't have to peel it. What you do have to remember is that carrots grow underground. Okay. Sometimes we forget that that's where food comes from. It comes from the ground. Okay. So carrots grow underground. That means they grow inside dirt. So you don't really want to be eating dirt. So you want to make sure the carrot is really clean. You do not have to peel it in order to eat it. So if I buy whole carrots, I make sure that they are washed really well, scrubbed. I have a special vegetable brush I keep at my kitchen sink that I can scrub it off with, or if I'm at work and I just grab the carrot, I will either use like just running water in my hands, or I might use a paper towel to kind of scrub it off to make sure that I got as much dirt off of it before I eat it. But you do not have to chop things ahead. You can use your teeth to chop them. So that said, I actually, for a lot of lunches, I don't bring things that have to be heated or cut or anything like that. It's almost like a charcuterie lunch. I have a little, I'd say I have a bento box, but I don't. I just have a Tupperware container, a boring old plastic Tupperware container with different compartments, and I fill it with baby carrots, these little cucumbers. I will get little tomatoes that don't require cutting and put those in there. I will put nuts in there. I'll put hummus in there. I'll get whole grain crackers. And then that's what I would have for lunch. So you don't have to do a lot of cooking in order to eat a plant-based diet. You can have basically a snack lunch where you throw in different things as long as your ratio, kind of lines up with how that plate is. And you're getting lots of plants, it doesn't matter what exactly you're getting. Okay, so raw vegetables we talked about. Now you can get frozen. It's a little harder to like snack on frozen foods, but frozen fruits and vegetables are great for adding in smoothies or putting in things like soups, or if you're actually cooking something. It's because they've prepped it for the freezer, it saves you work because you do not have to chop off the bad parts. It's all ready for you, which I love. You can buy onions that are already diced and in the frozen section. You can buy, you can buy garlic already done, buy it in the jar or buy it frozen. I like fresh garlic best, but I don't have the time and energy to chop it all up all the time. So I buy the jarred garlic, but I think the frozen garlic is pretty close to fresh. Salad kits are literally the best thing since sliced bread. I am pretty sure. I love all the different salad kits that they have now. I love that I don't have to chop anything. I love that I can grab the whole kit and bring it to work and make it a meal just by throwing a few extra things on the top if I want to. So I do think salad kits are super convenient. And then tofu is another easy way to get protein. So if I like the flavor of tofu. They even have a marinated tofu that you could buy at the grocery store. And it doesn't take much to just chop it up and, you can put it on a sandwich, you could put it on a salad or whatever. But that would give you a good, efficient protein that's also a plant. All right. So I spent a lot of time in the produce section, obviously, because there's lots of plants there. But you can get your produce in the canned section or the frozen section. And I would tell you that applesauce certainly is good for you. It counts as right a fruit, and it's something you can keep. The fruit cups and the applesauce, if you need backup in your pantry, or like I call it a backup, if I keep it here at work so that I have something available to me if I forget my lunch or don't get around to making it. All right, so we talked about frozen fruit, frozen vegetables, all fruit frozen popsicles, which are essentially smoothies. So, and then whole grain waffles are another good thing you can find in the frozen section that would give you more plants. It's essentially like bread, right? But it's something different. I will say I have found a lot of fun frozen fruits. I am not stuck in any particular grocery store, but my favorite grocery stores currently are Costco, and I do a Walmart delivery, which I love that they bring groceries to my doorstep. And I found a lot of really fun frozen fruits just by spending time in the Walmart app looking at what frozen fruits they have. I've gotten frozen passion fruit. I love passion fruit. Dragon fruit I found, frozen pomegranate arils, which are basically pomegranate seeds. So the whole pomegranate is already done for you, but it's in the freezer section. And so it doesn't go bad. Whereas you buy the pomegranate, like cups of pomegranate seeds, a lot of times they can go bad really fast. But the frozen ones, they're good whenever you need them, and they're delicious in smoothies. So passion fruit smoothies are one of my favorite things. And I probably never would have even thought of doing it if I wasn't just browsing the app looking for frozen fruit to make smoothies with. All fruit frozen popsicles, I have found those, they can be a little bit pricey. I mean, I think sometimes, right, good, nutritious, good tasting food is worth more money if you have it to spend. But if you're budget oriented or you like to just make it yourself, essentially all fruit, 100% fruit frozen popsicles are like you make a smoothie and you put it in a popsicle mold and you freeze it. And then you get to eat it like a popsicle. So that's fun. And I do have popsicle molds in my house, so I think this summer we'll be making some of those. All right, pantry staples. So these are other ways that you can make sure to get lots and lots of plants in your day. Granola bars are made from whole grain oats. Now you can make your own granola bars. I am not somebody who does that, so I can't help you. I do make my own granola, but I have not successfully made a granola bar that sticks together that isn't hard as a rock. So that said, I do tend to purchase granola bars. Cereal is a great pantry staple that can get you whole grains. Whole grain fig Newtons are a good option, I think, for like snacks. That would give you more whole grains. Whole grain bread, that's pretty much the only bread we buy. We do sometimes eat delicious, sort of refined grain bread. Like I have a friend who made me a sourdough bread that was delicious. I had a Southern sourdough bread earlier this week as well. They tend to be made with white flour, so they're not whole grain. And so what we buy for sandwiches is whole grain bread. So you want 100% whole grain versus if it's a specialty, a special thing like our sourdough bread. Pretzels, it can be hard to find whole grain pretzels, but you can find them. Whole grain crackers, my go-to is Triscuits. I love Triscuits. I love Triscuits. I love Triscuit thins. And I just get the original. Like I don't like all the extra flavorings that are on the other ones. There's nothing wrong with the flavorings per se, but if it says it's rosemary flavor, it's not actually rosemary, and that just bothers me. So I get plain old Triscuits and I eat them with cheese, I eat them with hummus, I eat them with soup, I eat them with almost everything. You can get whole grain chips because corn is a grain. So if you can get whole grain corn chips, those would count. Popcorn is a whole grain too, so you are welcome. Popcorn is a delicious snack. You can buy just the whatever skinny pop or any pretty much any popcorn. They can't make it refined, otherwise it would be popcorn. So it's a great option to have around when you want a snack that will give you a whole grain. So canned fish, canned chicken, obviously not plants, but they can give you good protein. You can mix it if you make like tuna salad. Of course, you can add onion, you can add dill, you can add celery, you can add black beans, you can add walnuts. So any way that you can, you can do that with chicken salad too. Any way that you can make that sort of meat give you the protein, but add vegetables to it means that you're going to get more plants, and that's what we're going for. Canned or dried beans are excellent. They are great sources of protein. So I told you even meat eaters are suggested to eat plant proteins once a day. So canned beans are excellent because they're already cooked. All it takes is dumping them out of the can. I tend to rinse off the juice that they're in. You can throw them in soups. You can throw them in your chicken salad or your tuna salad. You can puree them and make bean dip. You can actually puree them and make them into brownies, which is kind of weird but amazing at the same time. So there is nothing wrong with canned beans. They are soft, quick, easy proteins that are also plants. Yes, there is some sodium in there, but really not that much because you're going to use them as an ingredient in something else, most likely. And if you rinse them off, that takes off a fair amount of the sodium. Now, if you really want to save some money and control what types of ingredients are in your food, you get the dried beans. I have had success with dried garbanzo beans. I am able to successfully cook them in a crock pot and in a pressure cooker. So my last cooking class I did, we made hummus actually from dried beans by using a pressure cooker and then just adding all the ingredients and pureeing it. So I think that's fun. I made chocolate hummus the other day that my kids actually really liked from dried beans. So I gave myself lots of extra bonus points for doing that. Um, but you don't have to use it from dried. I have not had success with dried black beans. They tend to be really hard for me to get them to the right texture. Nobody wants crunchy black beans. So I do buy black beans, pretty much all the beans except garbanzos or lentils. I do buy those too dried. Nut butters, excellent source of plant protein. Nuts themselves, all different types. If you keep your nuts a long time or you like buy them from Costco in large amounts, you want to keep them in the fridge or the freezer so that the healthy oils don't go rancid. Barley, rice, quinoa, oats, all different types of grains that are good for you. I made a lentil barley soup this week. It was really good. And I did it in the pressure cooker, so that was handy. We always just keep brown rice and quinoa and whole grain oats around. We do a lot of oatmeal or the energy bites that are no bakes that are made out of oats. Dried fruit, excellent ways to just toss some more fruits into whatever you're eating. And then fruit cups, like we mentioned before, and applesauce are things that I would keep in your pantry so that if you're hungry at some point, you need a snack, but you do not have the energy or like even the decision-making power to go to a fridge. You know, it's if if it makes it easy for you to eat a plant because it comes in a, in a cup already done for you, I would give yourself the freedom for the easy button. And you keep those in your pantry. And then, yes, you also buy apples because we all like apples. But sometimes you're just in this headspace where you're not going to get an apple out. But you might eat some applesauce. And so I give you permission to have an easy button in your pantry. All right. Our animal proteins, probably won't spend too much time on this, but this is an efficient way to get protein. It's easy. And so chicken, turkey, fish, shrimp, lean pork, lean beef, eggs, cheese, yogurt. And anytime that you can add vegetables to your protein dish, your animal protein dish is a great way to make sure that your plate has the balance that is, half vegetables and a quarter protein and a quarter starch. So yogurt, a lot of times I am buying yogurt and putting, fruit and cereal or granola in there. All right, so your beverages, the things you want to keep, we talked about coffee and tea, water, sparkling water, 1% or skim milk is what I typically buy. And I have been getting the Fairlife milk. Maybe half the time I get Fairlife milk and half the time I just get regular cow's milk. But Fairlife milk, it does have more protein per cup. So that's kind of handy if you are looking to get more protein. And then kefir is also something I like to use in my smoothies because I like a tangy smoothie. On my website, I have a recipe for I think it's a lemon cherry smoothie. And if you make it with kefir, that helps add an extra lemony, tangy flavor. And I love it. It is so good. To me, it tastes like a frozen lemonade. 100% juice and soy milk are other things that you may want to keep to as your sort of easy button for getting more plant nutrients. So I thought this was kind of fun. These are some of the cheapest healthy foods that you can buy. Um, number four, you'll see is eggs. So in our current time, I'm not quite sure if eggs are back to normal, affordable, but certainly compared to meat, eggs are still going to be cheaper. Um, but lentils, canned beans, canned fish, eggs, tofu, peanut butter, bananas, raisins, oatmeal, whole wheat pasta, brown rice are all in the like sort of top, um, very affordable and uh, healthy foods. So definitely, I think pretty much all of these are things that I do have in my house. And bananas, I like to eat bananas when they're slightly green, but they go from slightly green to brown real fast. So I have a plan for my brown bananas too. So once they start turning brown, I end up buying more green bananas to eat. And then the brown ones, I let them get good and brown, and then I put them in the fridge or I peel them and put them in the freezer because they are excellent in smoothies. So, and banana bread if you want to. There is no banana going wasted, but I will always make sure that I have bananas that are a little bit green because I love to have those for breakfast. They're just really easy to grab and go. So I always, always, always keep like grab and go fruits available so that as I'm running out the door and I didn't pack my lunch, I just throw things in there. So I will throw like a banana, an apple, a whole red pepper or green pepper, and like trail mix. And like that would be a 3-minute pack your lunch, as long as you have the things in your house to put in there. You can also, if you have a little bit of time, rather than going through the drive-through, you can go to the grocery store and just grab 4 different things to make a lunch that would give you more plants and probably would be faster than a drive-through line. So all right, somebody asked on here, I love mac and cheese. How much should I consume? So, mac and cheese, if we're looking at our plate, if you think back to what the plate looks like, macaroni, right? The noodles themselves are going to be the starch. And then depending on how you make your mac and cheese, if it's just macaroni and cheese, then the cheese is going to be your protein. If you put milk in it, that kind of thing, it's going to have some protein. Now, if you are sort of leveling up your mac and cheese and trying to make it a more sort of healthified version, and you're using whole grain macaroni noodles, and I have a recipe on my website for like carrot mac and cheese or sweet potato mac and cheese. Um, I would tell you that's perfectly fine to have, like, I wouldn't necessarily put a quote limit on it. I would tell you probably if you made carrot mac and cheese and you use whole grain macaroni, then that's kind of going to be like your starch and your protein. You're still going to want half your plate to be vegetables. So what are you going to have with that mac and cheese? And so I would tend to say your mac and cheese portion would be between a half a cup and a cup, and then you would have a cup of vegetables to go with it. So but if you're talking about like just good old mac and cheese, like Thanksgiving style mac and cheese, I probably would not have that as a habit. That's a kind of a special food, right? And I define something as a habit if you do it 3 times a week or more. So let's say you have the healthified, like carrot mac and cheese with whole grains. I don't care how, you could have that 3 times a week on your plate if there's vegetables with it. If we're talking about, sometimes I buy the mac and cheese at Costco. That's not whole grain, and there's no carrots in that one. That would be something that I do on a, kind of a special occasion, and something that I do once a week, or that kind of thing. What are the problems of brown rice and wheat bran nowadays? I have no idea. I don't have any problems with brown rice or wheat bran. There were some rumors a couple years ago about, arsenic in rice. Um, Now that said, it really depends on how much you consume. So if you are a rice eater, like, are you talking about eating rice every day? Um, in that case, you might be a little bit more concerned. But like, I keep rice in my house, but we probably only have rice once or twice a week because there's so many different types of grains, right? You have pasta sometimes, you have rice sometimes, you have quinoa sometimes, you have bread sometimes. So usually people are just not consuming it often enough for that teeny tiny little amount of, arsenic that might be in there to cause a problem. Um, Anything can be toxic if you have too much of it. So even water can be toxic if you have too much in a short period of time. So when we talk about the brown rice and the wheat bran, it depends on how much you're having it, but that is not, to me, that is not something I'm concerned about. But if you have a specific, like an article you want me to look over, I'm happy to do that. Just send it to me by email. All right. So let's see. So what needs to happen is you kind of need to plan ahead little bit plan ahead, but I do have some tips for those of you who are not the planner aheader types. But what we want to do is plan on what we're going to eat because we have to order our groceries or go to the grocery store like old school and walk through the aisles and pick things up, and know what we want, right? So what I would recommend is that you make a shopping list for one thing before you go to the store. You can do that on paper. You can do that with a digital notebook. Or you can just, use your phone and dictate into it or whatever. I have used apps before where I keep just a running list of what we need. Um, I currently use a recipe app that then, I add the recipes to it, and then it tells me what ingredients I need, and then I check my pantry and I check off the things I already have. Whatever it is, you want to think a little bit ahead, and make your grocery list to make sure that you are, yes, eating as many fruits and vegetables as you want to. You want to know the food facts. So there's a couple of myths. I've already talked some about the sugar myth. I've talked about the soy myth, the dairy and the meat myth. And then there's a couple other myths you need to be aware of because that will give you some freedom in the grocery store. First of all, there's a myth that foods grown with conventional pesticides cause bad health. That is not true. There's no reason that you have to buy organic if you want to. That's perfectly fine. But we don't have any human studies proving that people who consume organically grown food have better health outcomes. We have so many studies showing that people who eat more fruits and vegetables and eat plenty of plants do have better health. So whether you consume them organic or conventional does not matter to me. What matters to me is that you eat fruits and vegetables. If you want to eat more organic, go for it. But just because you can't find something in an organic version does not mean that you should avoid it. Personally, I just buy whatever's the cheapest. So, and I always say you're welcome to change your mind in any given day. So one day you might decide organic, the next day you say, I don't care. Like you have the right to change your mind every single day. Don't let anybody tell you you can't. All right, the next myth is that fresh fruits and veggies are healthier than canned or frozen. I've already told you any vegetable is better than no vegetable. Canned and frozen are sometimes fresher than fresh because they're picked fresh and then canned or frozen there and then transported. Versus if they are picked and then they have to be transported a long ways, they have to be picked kind of early in their ripening process. So, that said, if you can sort of free yourself up to choose any of the available plants to put in your meal plan, that will make it easier for you to eat a plant-based diet. All right, so start with what you have. Start your meal planning with what you already have in your pantry or your cupboards or your fridge or your freezer, or what you can get at a steep discount because that, first of all, is going to waste less food. When we talk about how much food is produced in the US or in the world and how much is wasted, the number one cause of food waste is our own houses. So we can start by being good stewards of the earth and of the farmer's time and of all of our resources and use what we already have in our house to build our meal plan. It helps with inspiration because you're like, hey, what can I make with this rather than what do I want to eat? I don't even know. And it's going to save you money. All right, so that's what I would say you start with, and then think outside the store. So consider farm stands, farmers markets, or other locations that offer extra produce that also supports your local economy. So I love buying local if at all possible, although you heard me say I like to order on the app and have it delivered. Most farmers markets aren't working that way for me. However, you can buy into a farm or be part of a co-op or something like that. Today, actually, I went by a friend's house. She organizes a co-op so that we can get produce at a better price, and some of it will be local. And so that's how I like to do it, is that I buy the things that I know I'm going to always eat from those types of situations, or buy from a farmer and then plan my meals around what they provide for me. You can also grow your own veggies. I love growing my own, veggies and herbs. I will say I'm not very successful, so I can't really plan on it, but I just like the idea that I'm doing it and then I try to use them. And then I try not to put too much pressure on how much I produce because I'm not the best farmer. Check the sales before you go to the grocery store, or if you're on the app, check and see what's on sale. Typically, things that are in season are what's on sale, which is extra nice because they tend to be more local. Even your major grocery stores do get foods, produce from local farmers. So if you buy things that are on sale or that are in season, they tend to be produced closer to where you live. All right, so a couple of things that I will send links to. I have these on my website, but these are old school printable worksheets that you can hand write on. But I do like using them, which is simply to kind of think through my week and what recipes. I don't necessarily plan out recipes for every single night because I like to make large volumes and then eat leftovers, which saves me time. So like this past Sunday, I made a lentil barley soup. I made it in my 8-quart Instant Pot. So we had a lot of soup. So I froze some of it and I put some of it in the fridge so that I could bring it for lunches. So I tend to really only plan like 3 dinners a week. And then I try to also plan like, well, what types of, foods do I want in my lunch this week? And then kind of just do the same thing for the whole week. The other thing that can help with inspiring what you want to cook is that if you keep a list of your favorite recipes or your family's favorite things to eat. So lentil soup is something that my whole family just really likes. So I want to have that on my favorite recipes list and also plan it in my menu like once a week. It's just, okay, lentil soup, just always have that. And we have a couple of different recipes that are that way, that are just favorite recipes, spaghetti. Like everybody loves spaghetti. Okay, great. Just have those written down so that when you go to plan or make your grocery list, it's really simple to pull from those. And then if you want inspiration for new things, sometimes we get bored with the same old things. That's when you can kind of like add the new things into your meal planning. There's meal planning apps. There's, cookbooks or buying meal plans. You can do all those different types of things, but what really matters is that you kind of think a little bit ahead and make sure that your house is stocked with the things that you need to be successful with your plant-based eating. The bottom line is you just got to do it. It is not fun. I don't love meal planning. I have a friend who just loves doing it. So I would tell you to somehow figure out how to make it fun. So like what I would do is get myself a coffee and put some nice music on and sit in a lovely place in my house and get the cookbooks out, have all my things ready, and then just like make myself do it and give myself a little, reward for it. So here's a few places that you can go for recipe ideas. And I know I'm coming up on the end of my time for today, but obviously my website is one of your best and favorite places to get recipes. If you're not sure where to find my recipes, when you're on the main page, if you go under blog articles, there's you can click on recipes and that will bring you to anything that I've put on the website that's tagged as recipe. So I mentioned that I had an egg dish that I thought was really fun. Um, it got a lot of attention when I put this on social media, and it's been several years. But basically, this is like a breakfast, or you could have it for lunch or dinner, let's be honest. But this is a breakfast that would have eggs and vegetables in it. So essentially, I just have a green pepper ring, and I crack the egg into the ring of the pepper and it cooks there. I flip it over, I add cheese and tomato, and then I think that's dill that I have on top. And you could have it with a piece of toast, and that would essentially be a meal. So when we're talking about, meals for one or two, that can work really well. If you're cooking for a family of like 8 people, this is not going to be your dish. I mean, I guess it could be. You probably could do it in the oven, but I don't like to do made for order food for 8 people. I'm going to want to cook in bulk on that one. Other ways that you can get recipe ideas, there's a couple of really great budget recipe places. So cookingmatters.org is a great healthy eating program that we have done at Cancer Services, and their website's available to anybody. So I really like that. Spend Smart with Iowa State Extension is a really pretty website with budget-friendly recipes. MyPlate.gov also has some fun recipes. And then here's two other websites, and this is something I did this week to find I had barley in my kitchen and I had lentils in my kitchen, and I was like, I need to make something with barleys and lentil. And so I went to one of those websites where I put that in, and then it, gives you suggestions. So if you are starting with what's already in your house, you can put them in there to get some ideas for recipes. This is hands down one of my favorite cookbooks. And my daughter, who's like 14, she'll go pull this recipe book out and cook out of it. Things that she would never cook if I suggested it, of course. So I really like it. And it's something that I typically buy for anybody who's just trying to learn to cook, or, young adults who are getting their own place. And I love it because it's super practical and not complicated. She does have a free meal plan download. So if you want to kind of kickstart that, um, and her cookbook, not only that, it stands up on its own, like on your kitchen counter. So bonus on that. She doesn't even pay me to do this, promo. I just really like it. And she's a dietitian. So okay, here's your tips by your personality type. If you're a type A organized person, so this is me on my good days, right? I really want to be organized. I'm going to sit down there with my meal planning stuff, my recipes, and all this stuff. And I'm going to really make this plan for the week. You want to build your shopping list as you go. So I use an app where I add things when I run out. Keep a list of the recipes you want to try. So that's like another one of your checklists, right? Recipes to try. And then plan out meals with a buddy, split the cost or the grocery list. That's how you can make it really fun. And then you share the load of meal planning if you have somebody that you do this with. So that's your type A organized. See this guy, he's got his list with him at the grocery store, he's really on top of it. Now, a lot of the time, I mean, like probably more often than I am a type A organized person, I am a type B, like buy on the fly kind of person. So, you do not have to make your whole grocery list before you go. You can like go to the grocery store on the fly, buy some things, and then figure out what you're going to make when you get home. That is going to be a little more adventurous. So you need to be open to being adventurous. You're going to probably need cookbooks around where you can search, and you might need to alter the recipes a little bit. But I would suggest you go to the farmer's market before you go to the store because that's a fun experience. You can pick up the things that look really good, and then build off of that and stick to the most convenient items you can find in each food category, or each food group, canned or frozen. Because if you end up buying things, you haven't really planned ahead what you're going to make, you buy things, but then you end up not using them, you don't want them to go bad. So canned or frozen foods are less likely to go bad than if you get the fresh foods, put them in your fridge, and then never use them. So either way, you can be super organized and on top of things, or you can just like go put lots of plants in your cart and come home. You probably will save more money by doing it the organized route, but hey, you'll save more time by going on the fly. So either way is fine. What matters most is that you're eating plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds. And really getting that ratio so that your plate looks like half vegetables and a quarter of it starch and a quarter of it protein. Because eating is your opportunity to promote your health. The only way that you can give your body the nutrients that it really needs to function is by chewing and swallowing those foods. And you got to purchase them first, right? Get them in your house, in your cart, in your lunch bag or whatever in order to eat them. So, like we talked about with the mac and cheese, you do not need to have a 100% perfect diet. There's nobody here who's going to give you some kind of grade on your diet. I would tell you that 80/20 is probably what you could aim for. I think that's reasonable. It still allows for you to eat foods just because they taste good, like mac and cheese. You love them. You want the, good old mac and cheese, or you want to be able to have your chocolate desserts. Of course, we all do. Like, there's no reason that you should have an absolutely perfect diet. Because I think that a huge part of eating is the experience of being with friends and family, of having things that just taste delicious to you. So is it a habit? Do you do it 3 times a week or more? If so, and it's not a great habit, then let's think about how we can maybe have that less often. It doesn't mean never. And that 80/20 rule means 80% of the time, that's 5 or 6 days a week. Your plate generally looks like the Cancer Dietitian plate guide. And then 20% of the time, which is 1 or 2 days a week, you are just eating whatever because either it's a really stressful day, or you're at the family picnic, or you're at Disney World and you just need to eat whatever it is you're going to eat. So that's kind of where I fall in all of this. The take home points for today are to include plants in your meals and snacks as much as you can. Get a variety of colors, because by getting colors, you will get lots of different plant nutrients. Have plant proteins at least once a day. Even if you are a meat eater, you still want to include a plant protein. That's going to give you the protein you need plus extra plant nutrients. Then get your bonus plant nutrients in herbs, spices, tea, coffee, vegetables in your smoothie. That's where you can get those bonus plant nutrients. Keep calm, eat your vegetables. Um, and I thought I had a slide about, I must not have put it in here. Okay. Sorry, I'm probably making you dizzy. I'll send in the follow-up email. But probably a lot of you who are already on already saw that I'm doing Eat the Rainbow starting June 6th. So that'll be a good way for you to I send out recipes every week, encourage you to eat more fruits and vegetables. So that's a way that we can all kind of do that together. And then I will be doing my cooking class in August as a virtual hybrid option. So I will be in person for anybody who can make it in person, but I'm planning to get the technology to work where you all can be online as well. And then I will have, I have a Survivor Diet email series and then some other resources coming throughout this summer. So just make sure you're on my email list, which I think most of you probably are. But if you're not, you just go to cancerdietitian.com and sign up for the updates. And if you have other questions, feel free to show them in the chat. Oh, and or the Q&A before I sign off. And then we'll see hope I'll see you again. I'm not doing a webinar in the summer, but I am doing another webinar in September will be the next webinar. Thank you so much, everybody, and I look forward to having you join me with Eat the Rainbow in June. Take care.